I do think that there has been an acceleration of professional managerial class liberalism taking over the culture industry and making it an arm of its propaganda indoctrination arm.
I would agree.
And that means like from Zero Dark 40 to Godzilla versus King Kong,
Right.
to Batman.
Jurassic Park.
It's really, really coordinated.
Yeah.
And even like the recent the Rings of Power. It's a really it's a group of people who are professionally trained, who went through graduate school in MFA programs or MBAs, quants now, who want to streamline the production and the consumption of culture. And it has an agenda. It's an anti-left, it could say anti-extremist, pro-US imperialism, pro-identity politics propagandizing, and it works. And everything is like, oh yeah, I've been watching The Sandman, and it's all like extremely enlightened on the level of interracial relations, on the level of queer relations, on the level of non-gender conforming characters. But the actual here, I'm going to say something against Eileen, is that the actual plot itself is completely uninteresting. It's all about the presentation of these personae who are enacting this new way of being, the new tolerant, professional managerial class curated notions of diversity and pluralism. And for your human resource department in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's basically like the video that they should show in training, with some like really, I love Neil Gaiman actually, with some Neil Gaiman-esque supernatural elements.
Yeah, if I could just put in a plea for art though, like it does seem to me, you're right. I think that's exactly, or like one of the main things that has occurred, that has tamped down anything that's a kind of the extremist reaction that seems to me makes total sense and would get us somewhere toward an art that we have no way of expressing what we're in right now. We're not just thinking we're in end times like many generations before us. We pretty well know we are. And yet there's no corresponding, at least that I know, certainly not in cinema that I'm seeing, that is really reflecting the extremity of what our circumstances are. And surely if art is worth anything, it's worth that. That's what it could do for us. Because when your imagination is failing, you want someone to come along and say, this is what we're in, this is what our experience is, this is what it looks like, this is what the form of it is. And we don't have that. And it seems incredible to me. How bad does it have to get before there's enough of a reaction to get like furious raging art going? I don't know.
I think it does exist in some way in the horror genre. I saw what you were describing, Eileen, actually like reminded me of this horror short that I saw because it was in the middle of the pandemic, and it was made by a young woman whose name escapes me now, but it was a short about how this woman had these unidentifiable internal pains, very much like, yuppie exhaustion syndrome. This is before long COVID, right? She's always going to the doctor. And the only thing that brings her relief is posting these horrible things online on other people's content, like just being a horrible troll, right? And so she'll go through these like stomach spasms and then like post something like, you should kill yourself on YouTube to some YouTube maker. And at the end of the film, she's in the bathroom, she's throwing up, and she's, nothing she's doing is making anything better. And she's been to all these like new agey healers. And finally, she's detoxifying and she throws up an iPhone. She like literally gives birth to an iPhone, and she's like, she's like holding this bloody thing in her hand, like it's her baby. And I thought, wow, that really did get to the moment where we are at. So I think horror is a genre that is popular and both really extreme. I haven't seen any recent horror films, but I do hold out hope for that. It's a very youth oriented genre too,
very,
like so
very A24, and bodies, which I
Yeah.
hated, is trying to take on the
Bodies,
horrors.
Yeah, you
bodies.
can read
I
Eileen's
never
review.
saw that. Oh, yeah. Okay, I will.
Still
I
out
will
there.
say
if you want to.
one recent horror movie that I thought was really good was Ty West's movie X.
Which I
but
haven't
it's
seen.
well, I would be curious to hear your thoughts, but it's kind of a period piece, you know. So there is that sort of it's very like Texas Chainsaw kind of inspired. You know, group of teens goes out to the countryside and mayhem ensues, and it's very explicitly a period piece. It's set in the 70s, so again, there's that kind of element of, you know, an era past or something.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But like that's
Nope too.
but that's a great example. Is there anything that's as powerful a vision of what was happening in the 70s as Leatherface holding up that chainsaw?
Right.
And I would argue no, because we'd all know it now. And there's just, that's what I mean. To watch the first Texas Chainsaw is just to be like, this is disturbing because it's too raw, it's too gritty, that's a great film. Yeah. I can still remember it so vividly.
You know what else was a great film is Night of the Living Dead. That was like
excellent.
Such
Wonderful.
1968. That was just such an incredible
this is what I'm talking. Where are these films that are just like sear into your brain and then that never people are be able screaming to about? You know, like what's a recent example of something critics were screaming about? The Joker. I went back to read this piece I did about critics are just having a cow. There's going to be riots in every theater. There are going to be mass killings. It went on and on. Of course, absolutely nothing happened.
Right.
How about Nope? I haven't seen Nope.
I haven't seen that either.
I actually loved it, but I think it's left a lot of people behind. I've been reading like it's literally incomprehensible. I really adored it for complex reasons that I don't know if I should go into here since you guys haven't seen it. It would have to be major spoilers.
Well, I want to see it. But you know what? I don't actually consume serious cinema because all I do is stream. Like at the end of a long day. At the end of a long day, I don't go to the movie theater. I don't have like a ritual anymore because of COVID. And so I'm like, give me the dumbest, eye garbage that I can watch so I can get through this evening so I can get up and work tomorrow morning.
Absolutely.
And right now I'm not watching that much. The Rings of Power is truly horrible. But I'm going to watch it, and then House of the Dragon, which is like actually okay. Which is actually okay, but it's a little bit eye garbage, and it's very plot driven, as Eileen said. And I'm like, I'm not sitting there being ravished by the cinematography or anything. It's like extremely predictable lighting, extremely, extremely composed, but also like rather bland. There are beautiful performances, though. I do have to say. So I sit there, I'm like. Okay,
there's wonderful stuff like The Bear. I rave and I loved it and all that.
Yeah, I like that one too.
I will just again another old man yells at cloud plea. One thing that is missing, that is almost impossible to recapture in your home theater or viewing, no matter how grand you make it, the drama of the exhibition of cinema in its traditional sense. It just has it, or it used to. I don't know that people really feel it anymore. I always did. My friends and I went to the movies. Just to go, we would see all sorts of crap, knowing it was probably going to be crap, but it was just like, we are in the theater. The lights have gone down. That magic beam has come up. It's just like, it's already kind of exciting. There's something exciting about the circumstance. And of course, seeing so many movies is so augmented by the crowd experience. People know that that's a cliche, but it has a kind of profundity that we've also just gone, but the hell with it. Other than, we'll see a few things in IMAX, major action films, major superhero films, I guess.
That when Guy Debord wrote, Society of the Spectacle, he said the spectacle separates us all, right? I mean, but this was still like early 60s Paris, so people were still going to the movie theaters and together, each having their separate experiences, but together. And then the 68 student rebellion happens because they're going to threaten, the government is threatening to close down a cinematheque. So like that togetherness is really important. Like the separation that Debord was talking about is like 100,000 times more extreme. And because we all each get our personal news feed, so nobody reads the same news articles. We all see our Twitter feeds, if you're really old, you're on Facebook, but I guess your Instagram feeds, I don't even know what they're doing on Instagram, but your TikTok feed. Everyone has a particular curated, algorithmically curated feed, and then you're watching things alone. And I had students spend 2 years of their lives watching things alone and then watching me. And there was this craving for togetherness. And so when we first got together, and then like the pandemic, the COVID numbers would go up, and then we'd be back in our homes again. And I almost feel like COVID was like really well designed for streaming media and the corporate monopolization of content production, because you don't want people really getting together. You don't want people having collective experiences when you're a big capitalist. So you want everyone to be alone and having this information being pumped out to them. So the thing that, or just content pumped out to them. The one thing I have to say about like the streamers and the YouTube things is they do build a kind of community, and they have that like, the live stream responses.
Right.
So you have a very controlled way of having these live stream responses that are still mediated by the, screen, but we're more separated than ever. And that is like the real end time situation for me, Eileen. Like I would love to see someone make art out of that, because I think about that all the time. I think about how lonely people are, how you want to share your thoughts because you're just lonely. I'm lonely.
I would say Michael Haneke makes movies about that.
He does, and they're so fucking dark.
Yeah.
Yes, he does. You're right.
Because I have to say, the movies that were about the COVID experience, at least the ones I saw that came out, I found very disappointing.
Which one?
Right? Yeah.
Well, Kimmy by Steven Soderbergh, that one.
Oh my God, that was horrible. That was so like weak. About COVID.
Well, she was agoraphobic and couldn't go up, but I think there was still the masking was happening. And
No, it was there was some unidentified. Yeah, oh my God, that was just a piece.
But it was just so
and I love
weak.
Soderbergh.
Yeah, he's done great things, but this just seemed like a real whiff. And I saw a couple of other things that weren't even at that level, and I just thought, you're not somehow getting at it. And I mean, and Kimmy's life looked so great for one thing. She's this massive tech wizard and has an incredible loft apartment set up,
and she's never gained a single pound sitting in front of her computer 24/7.
So everything
what's your diet, girl? That's what I want to know.
Exactly. So that was really disappointing how no one could get a grip. I mean, there was that terrible thing set in the hotel about the Jurassic Park 4 experience. Oh, what was the name of it? It was so bad. It ran on Netflix, I think. It was absolutely atrocious. It was, as a comedy, it was the weakest comedy I've ever seen. 2 years after we all did the first swabbing, it was making a huge deal about like, oh, swabbing's horrible. And you're like, man, you're so late.
Yeah,
everyone's done. So it's that kind of toothlessness that I think I find most maddening.
Yeah. Remember how afraid we were of people? Like I was thinking about zombie movies, like everyone's a point of infection. Like where's our 28 days later? Like you're walking down the street and you're just terrified of the other, that they're going to like sneeze on you or something.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was so extreme, and it like fed into every upper middle class fantasy about like cleanliness and control. Like, oh my God, this is I want someone to make this movie, because I'm just too busy. But
me too, and it's frustrating not to be able to think of what it should be. But part of the problem is,
so I have an idea. I have an idea, because this happened on my listserv. I live in this university like affiliated neighborhood of like 1,200 households, and in the middle of the pandemic there was an ad for a job. Like, we need a mother's helper. They're both MD, PhDs, both working at home. Please join us in our quarantine pod. We have 2 children, 2 and 4. We'll pay very well. Immunocompromised welcome. We won't want to have any contact with other people. You have to abide by our COVID protocols because we are immunocompromised. And I thought, oh my God, that's the perfect horror movie.
Yeah,
like
they definitely lock that nanny in the basement.
Yes. And you have like, I had this whole idea that they were going to be a white Asian couple, MD, PhDs, and a young working class Latino woman with maybe Latina with asthma comes in and says, she's got all these student loan debts. And they're like, oh my God, we'll help you pay that. You don't have to pay rent. And then like, the kids are creepy. There's actually a basement. Like, that is the Job Ad was a horror movie.
Mhm.
Job Ad. I mean,
Right.
I don't think it's legal to employ people that way. 24/7 trapped in your house. Like
Right.
that literally is chattel slavery, but it was the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
And they were obviously desperate to find childcare because
Mhm.
they're like making all this money and they're doing their email job. I don't know how you do like MD PhD stuff on email, but maybe you've got your experiments running and you're just doing this on the computer. And so they're dying because they have 2 and a 4-year-old, right? And there's no childcare. They've got these high-powered jobs, make all this money, and they're immunocompromised. They're terrified of COVID. So what do you want to do? Absorb the help
Right.
into your pod.
Right. Oh, that is
That's
good.
fucking horrifying,
That
right?
is good,
That's the scary. That's a
Yeah.
Cabin in the Woods. That is
Mhm.
Night of the Living Dead. Like
Mhm.
everything is in there. So
Mhm.
please, somebody out there,
Yeah.
make
There you
this
go.
movie because I've got too much on my plate. But I will love this movie to death. In a California subdivision.
Yeah,
Oh,
of course,
that
of
is
course.
perfect. Yeah.
All right. Well, look, I think we should wrap up, but I do want to first get to this question about politics, right? Because Eileen, you had mentioned the Joker, and I don't know if you guys saw it, but the Joker director Todd Phillips, a while back, or I think when he was doing the kind of press tour for that movie,
Right.
he talked a lot about how he thought wokeness and politics was kind of degrading comedy and degrading the cinema,
Yeah.
and I'm actually sympathetic to like certain aspects of that argument. But the broader question I wanted to pose to both of you is, why do liberals lose their minds over pop culture? This is something that we've talked about on the show before, and I think we touched on it, Eileen, when you came on last year. But to go back to something that you had brought up, Catherine, like liberal commentators are obsessed with pop culture, and they're obsessed with it in a very specific way, which is that the film should be a carrier of a good message, right?
Yes.
And that usually takes the form of like, we need more superheroes of X color, or more women superheroes, and this film needs to be sort of uplifting and inspiring for X marginalized group. Why did liberals suddenly glom onto pop culture in this way?
That's a good question. Catherine, you grab that
I
one.
have no idea.
And then, of course, follow-up
just
is
because
wokeness ruining everything.
they need a control. They need to control everything.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Well,
They're
you could say there was a long kind of left liberal history.
Sure, yeah.
That sure they lost as far as like the post-war blacklist, they lost in many ways, but they did manage to get certain types of content made that made it seem like they won the culture wars, right? The To Kill a Mockingbirds, etc. Many films of uplift, of a certain type that we can kind of recognize. And I think that's partly how the raging right can always say the left has won.
Right.
Even though we're like, we won.
No. I think uplift is the thing that's
Yeah.
really important here.
Yeah.
They're part of that progressive Victorian elite and progressive era thing about how we have to uplift people. Like people are basically like downtrodden children, and we are an elite who have to produce things that lift them up. And that is just, it's condescending. It's about exercise of power.
Yeah.
It really is about and I think it's about ideological control. Like there might have been a moment when high culture really created a kind of aspirational thing where you could be, there was a moment where you could be like just a horrible person, but make good art, right? And they're mostly men, like Jackson Pollock peeing in somebody's fireplace when he's invited to a party, William Burroughs, becoming a drug addict in Morocco and then in Tangier and then writing these books. There's the counterculture, the high culture thing can make these heroes out of artists that are just bad boys. I'm not sure that's good necessarily.
Are
but
artists
there was
ever good?
definitely
Male, female, really? That's not. I never can buy that one. Writers aren't. I'm a writer.
But right now, it's like you have to be a good person.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. It seems
to be
insane.
It's a new form of censorship. I think that's really powerful because you're constantly trying to cut people out.
Yeah.
You're constantly trying to exclude people to try to curate the best culture, and you're a bunch of new economy Philistines, and you've read like 3 books your whole life, one of them being Malcolm Gladwell, and then you've decided that you're just going to nudge people with their cultural content, and it's incredible power, exercise of power and control. There was at least an acknowledgement in the olden days that Eileen and I knew, when you could see the artist as a figure out of control, out of your control, that you could still admire, but someone who you could not control. And now it's like, I got to control everyone. Everyone's going to control me. I am everyone's going to be controlled by me. I'm the liberal superego. I have money, and money will help me curate the content stream that I want to uplift the dumb idiots who are consumers for whom I make this stuff.
Well, it's the Todd Phillips thing was interesting, I thought, because the implication is there was just absolutely bleeding edge, brilliant comedy being done before the woke movement silenced it. I don't remember this, do you? Especially coming out of, the frat pack and stuff. I mean, that's not that people weren't funny, amusing, yes, fine. But the idea that it's like we're silencing genius voices is, I don't know,
You're
maybe
probably
I missed
thinking
it.
more of Richard Pryor, someone like that.
Yes.
Or George Carlin.
But it's always told in, the protest from people like Todd Phillips is always just tremulous with self-pity. Like, here I was doing this before. And I have some sympathy. I actually like Joker more than a lot of people.
I loved it.
I thought it was
We're pro Joker.
I know, I love Joker.
Yeah.
But it didn't bring on the mass societal collapse that only capitalism can produce.
Right,
Exactly.
Not a movie.
If you like this video from The Jacobin Show, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks.